Yo.
Hey, good morning, everybody. What a great day it is. Thursday. It is November 7th. Can you believe it? Man, it's just flying. We're going into what, week 10 of college football? There's so many of them. There's like 14. But I'm looking here at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
11.
11. I just did
11. Week 11. Right. But they do the week 0 thing.
I don't count that. If a game's played off the soil of America, I don't count it. Not that. Right. Now, Ireland is the motherland for me. So
that's right.
Anyway,
well, I got a little Irish in me, by the way.
Damn right you do.
Damn right.
That's right you do. Hey man, smash that subscribe button on that QR code for the show. You'll get an automatic notification every day. Got a great lineup today. Coach Matt Dean over in Memphis. We're going to be all over the place today. John Hartwell, AD down at ULM. Gary Harris in Tuscaloosa. Channel 23, Tide 100.9, Tider Insider TV. Dudley Dawson, Hogville.net. In between, we're going to talk about, hey, how many teams do we think from the SEC are going to make the college football playoff this year? The rankings have come out. We know who's in there right now. Man, there's a lot of jockeying for position. Matt Dean's over there licking his chops. And I want to say something about new sponsor we picked up yesterday down in Athens, Alabama. Winter Timber Outdoors. All right, we're going to hear a lot about these folks. They are located in Athens, Alabama. They're going to grow their footprint in the SEC model, the college towns. They're opening up, breaking ground on a new store in Auburn, Alabama, November 14th, over there on Opelika Highway, Village Mall, now Colonial Mall. They're right near the Walmart. You're not going to miss them. Expected to open up in June, possibly May. Winter Timber Outdoors, open 7 days a week. Check out that QR code. They're running a BOGO special on a GPS device.
Anytime you got BOGO on things that like are equipment like related for me, I'm in.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm buying it. Like I go into Radio Shack. I used to be dangerous back in the day.
I love them. Yeah, and Radio, boy, do we miss Radio Shack. Winter Timber Outdoors, 1124 U.S. Highway 72 East in Athens, Alabama. Look, they're open 7 days a week. They've got all the firearms, shotguns, rifles, Benelli. They got the Super Black Eagle, the SBE-3. I've been shooting the Super Black Eagle a long time. Love it. Sig Sauer, Winchester, Glock. Also, Dixie decoys, all Sitka gear, Browning trail cams. They've got polos for Tennessee, Auburn, Alabama, and other assorted college gear, duck hunting, deer hunting, quail hunting. They've got you covered. Winter Timber Outdoors, WTOutdoors.com. Met with Kenny Winter, the owner, yesterday. He's friends with Chris Aiken, another one of our sponsors, Web-Footed Kennels in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Building a great coalition here, a great team, and we've also got the best lineup of guests with the best executive producer on the planet. Invest in your people, folks. Do it every day. Matt Dean knows that. You coach every day in practice. I bet you would go up to every one of your athletes and say something to them to try to get them to go play a little harder. How the hell are you doing? And how was Ann Arbor, the big house?
Rob, it's great. It's great to be back on with you guys.
I'm wound up.
Why wouldn't you be? It's like you said earlier, another great week in the SEC. I did not get to make the trip to Ann Arbor, but it was a wonderful game for Oregon again on the road. I don't care what you're talking about when you go on the road to that type of environment. You got to be ready to play, and Dan Lanning and the boys are ready to play. And the question you posed earlier about SEC and the number of teams in the playoffs, obviously right now we have 4 in the top 12. We have a couple teams just outside the top 12. I think the way it shakes out, obviously whoever makes the SEC championship game should be in. And I think we'll get 2 more. I'm saying the number is at least 4. I think the reason it's going to be harder to get more is we beat each other up so much. We're going to have some teams that are really good football teams that may finish 9-3. I'm just not sure. I think the cutoff is 10-2, Rob. That's just my opinion.
I think you're right. This year, the SEC right now, we've got Texas in there, Tennessee, Alabama, and Georgia. And I don't know if I think that 9-3, you might get it in some years, but not in the first year because I don't think they want to catch that much heat. You got Boise is the favorite right now of the group of 5, but I think the debate's going to be why can't we have more than one group of 5 if there's a lot of really good group of 5 teams? Yeah. In the SEC, I still think Georgia's the best team.
Yeah.
And they're playing in Oxford Saturday. That one for Ole Miss knocks them completely out. They're still alive, on a wing and a prayer. But I think Georgia's the best team in the league. They proved that. Look, they've had to go on the road to Alabama and Texas this year. That's right. A great resume.
And now Ole Miss, right? And let me kind of go back to my initial statement. I think if you're a 10-2 team that plays in a conference championship game, you could end up 10-3 and still make the playoffs. Okay. I think one of the things that's really interesting about this is if I'm 10-2 and I don't make the college football playoff, you're 10-2 and you do, but you lose. Do I jump you though? I didn't get to play in that game and you did. I mean, to me, I still think it matters if you're in a conference championship game in a big, let's just look at the Big Ten and the SEC right now. The losers of those championship games should be in. Now, that's not necessarily the case in the Big 12. ACC, it depends too, but right now it looks like Miami's pretty much chalk. The way Miami's playing, if they were to get upset in the ACC championship game, they still deserve to be in that title game if they only have one loss, right? So could a number 2 seed, let's say Clemson, I don't have the standings in front of me. Let's say Clemson plays Miami in the ACC final and they beat them. Well, Clemson would be in, but then Miami should be in too. But does that knock out a 4th team from a conference like the Big Ten or the SEC? Possibly does, right? Because you're going to look at a higher ranked ACC team like Miami. They could be as high as 2 or 3 come the end of it, right? And we know from history, the way playoffs are done in terms of rankings, you're not going to fall from 2 to 13. So that's all I'm saying right now. That's why it's still tricky. I'll tell you another thing that's problematic, in my opinion. Yeah. Let's go to the Big Ten. Let's say Oregon and Oregon State have a rematch, and just appease me here. Let's say they're 1-2 in the rankings. Well, let's say it's another really close game. Let's say Ohio State wins this time. Yep. Under the rules, Ohio State would be ranked in the top 4. Oregon would fall to at least 5. So they would have to play a home game and not a first-round bye. But we all know that in the SEC and the Big Ten, you could make an argument that the 4 top-seeded teams should come out of that league. It's not going to happen because of the way they structured it, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just a real interesting dynamic. But that being said, too, let's say you fall to a 5 seed. Your path is almost better. You get a home game versus the 12. If you win that, then you play the 4 seed, which probably will be the winner of the Big 12. Assuming on a neutral site you beat them, now you're in the semifinals. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to look at this, Rob. It's really intriguing. I think it's fun. And you know what I say? Why haven't we been doing this model for years? That's what I say.
Well, it's all about money. And the NCAA, it's the same thing with NIL and the portal, but really NIL for decades, student athletes advocated for long-term health care benefits, among other things, and it was never addressed by the NCAA. They just played kick the can, and the can came back and blew up in their face. That's a lack of leadership, LOL. Now, looking at these scenarios, the tiebreaker, that possible scenario, I mean, it gets down to a coin toss and a bare knuckle, boxing match, I think, for who's going to get in. I saw a number of scenarios over the summer in different football magazines and on websites and on X and everywhere else. You might have one team 11-1 in the SEC, and it had like 5 teams log jammed at 10-2.
Yeah.
So you got to think, if you're Ole Miss and you lose to Georgia, you're out. But then you're kicking yourself for that Kentucky loss. Wow, is that looking bad? And that's going to haunt them. And then the other one, dadgummit, LSU, you never trailed the entire game. but you lost in overtime. You know, other than Alabama, Ole Miss has beaten LSU in Baton Rouge more than anybody. They, Matt, let's talk about this one. I mean, Saturday. Look at the games we've got coming up Saturday.
Yeah.
Alabama at LSU. We'll get into that with Gary Harris at
Sure.
half past the hour. But you know, you've got Florida at Texas. Let's talk a little about that. We don't know. I've pulled hamstring before. It hurts so bad it makes you dizzy. If DJ Lagway's not ready to go, and they've got a Yaley out there, the third-team quarterback, I don't see them beating Texas with Lagway. Hell, anything's possible. I really believe that he's that good.
So Rob, we haven't talked since last Thursday. I can't tell you how impressed I was with Florida. I mean, in the fourth quarter, that game is 2020 with 6 minutes to go, and all the injuries they sustained.
Yeah.
Man, they got some really good young players, Rob. And Lagway, man, he's a dude. He's really, really good.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, we started this year. Let me just kind of pull this narrative off a little bit because, you know, I kind of listen to you sometimes on the Buddy Martin show and the Florida Talk. You know, we started the year and everybody was kind of like, you know, what's going to happen? Regardless of what happens, Rob, there's a lot of really good young talent on that roster. And they have a guy, DJ Lagway, he's going to be the guy. And they have a bright future, in my opinion. Going to the Texas game specifically at Texas, if he's not able to go, and I don't know the injury report, I'm assuming he's not, it could be completely off base, but that's going to be very difficult. But I do think their roster is good enough to compete and make it a game and deep into the game. You know what I'm saying? Because I look at some really interesting things right now. You mentioned Georgia Ole Miss.
Yeah.
We know if Ole Miss wins this game, it creates a really internal, logjam because now Georgia's got 2 losses. Ole Miss has got 2 losses. I think Georgia still has to play Tennessee. But, you know, just look at what Georgia has done after the first 28 points against Alabama on the road. They've been pretty doggone good. I would expect Kirby is going to have these guys. In his mind, this is probably an elimination game too. Whether it's not, I don't know. But it definitely is for Ole Miss. And here's what's unfortunate. Ole Miss, if they go 9-3 and lose this game, the Kentucky game will bite them because even at 9-3, they're a top 12 team in the country, in my opinion. But they probably won't be ranked that way, right? So, just food for thought. I think Texas probably wins by 2 scores this weekend. That's my initial thought process. But I am overly impressed with the fight that Florida continues to show. Really, really interesting.
Well, what you look at, you better be damn careful about pulling the plug, you know, getting rid of a coach after 2 or 3 years because it's a cycle, and it's like you get pulled in. A sniper takes out somebody, someone goes to rescue him, he takes him out. The next guy goes in, takes him out. Pretty soon, you're all gone. You've got look at Tennessee as Exhibit A. Phil Fulmer, you know what?
Yeah.
You know, in 2008, God, I was over in Knoxville. I remember when they fired him. I was up there, and they forced him out. Whatever you say,
Right.
But the bottom line is, when he lost David Cutcliffe, he lost the heart and soul of his team. When David Cutcliffe left, and you realize you should know if you follow football how important coordinators are.
I have breaking news. I'm sorry. My dog has been found. My dog has been found.
Sammy has been found.
Hooray!
Jesus, thank you, Jesus.
Where was he?
And you would you guys like to know where he was found?
I would.
The parking lot of the First Baptist Church of Ocala, Florida, where my family has roots all day long. Before it was burned down.
St. Anthony?
Before it was burned down. We didn't even pray
Yeah.
to St. Anthony. We prayed that church is my family all day long. This wonderful woman, I'm not going to mention her name because I don't know if she wants me to.
Wow.
Praise God. That is the power of prayer right there.
That is
right there.
absolutely.
The power of prayer. If you don't
It
believe
is.
in prayer, you don't believe in God, then you don't got that in your heart. I'm not going to preach, but gosh, you really need to find something because that is the
Absolutely.
power of believing something bigger than yourself.
Yeah, that's why we were, before the show, Matt, Sammy Bones was missing, and I was like, oh crap! But you lose it. Dogs aren't like family; they are your family. So thank
They're
God he's
everything.
back.
They're
Ah,
everything.
And
Sorry,
Brendan,
everyone.
I
Thank
don't
you
know
for
if
letting me.
if you heard what Matt was saying about Florida, and we don't know about the availability chart if DJ Lagway is ready to go. But I'm
Yeah,
just
they
saying,
don't do that anymore.
yeah, changing coaches, it's so dangerous because Tennessee, the problem was made worse when Lane Kiffin came by for a cup of coffee and stayed for 1 year, and then he went to Southern Cal. But I think I look at this Florida roster again. I go back to some basics, and John Hartwell's on with us now.
Sorry,
Tell me-
John, if I made you wait. I apologize if you were in the green room too long. I'm sorry.
Hey, the dog is way more important than I am, so I'm glad you're back.
Then all of us.
Yeah. And my mom says I like dogs better than people. I go, why is that? She goes, because they don't talk back and they don't always ask for money. I'm like, okay. All right. We're talking, John, about what's going on, college football, SEC, college football playoff rankings. It is creating a hornet's nest of interest and activity nationwide. And I think that tiebreaker scenario in the SEC gets down to a coin toss and a bare knuckle boxing match. Somebody's going to get an ass whipping. It's going to be ugly. It could be crazy. Let's talk about what you're seeing. Group of five, Power Four. Do we still call it the Power Five? It's not anymore because the Pac-12 has shrunk to 2 teams. And but look at the interest in this. Tell me what about and also what happened down there with y'all with the Warhawks.
Yeah, good to see you guys this morning. I'm actually driving today on my way from Baton Rouge back to Monroe. Came down for our men's basketball game last night. As Rob knows, got to get the world according to Coach John Brady, which is always entertaining. Nice. As he looks forward to being on and talking hoops here, in a few weeks. But obviously the first rankings to come out, you've got Boise, who is leading the charge right now in the group of 5. But there's still a lot of you got 4 weeks of the regular season left. Championship weekend. There are a lot of moving parts left in this, but knowing that regardless of what happens, there will be a group of 5 school emerge and be amongst those 12 is really exciting. And then, like you said, as I was at Pete Maravich Assembly Center last night, and obviously down here, everybody's talking about Alabama and LSU this weekend, and almost in a loser leave town mentality in terms of whoever loses that game probably is going to be out of the 12-team contention, just like you guys were talking about Ole Miss and should they lose to Georgia. But I think that excitement and having more teams in the playoff has created even more excitement, and a lot of teams, their motto is, hey, we want to play meaningful games in November. Well, there are a whole lot of meaningful games in November that have not only CFP ramifications, but obviously conference championship ramifications as well.
Yeah. And Matt, along those lines, the TV people have got to be doing backflips, going crazy about the interest, the eyeballs, because it sometimes can be hard to keep an audience in November, can't it?
Yeah, no doubt. And John, it's always good to see you. It's really interesting, I think, this year, the 5 through 12 games. And it's going to be, the week before we seed everybody who gets, there's always going to be a team or two on the bubble. We know that in any sport you have. It happens in NCAA basketball every year. It'll happen this year with football. But I'm really curious. It's like one of the great stories this year to me is Indiana. I mean, no matter what you say, I know their strength of schedule, I think, was like 101, but they have to play Ohio State in a few weeks in Columbus, which will be a big challenge. But Curt Cignetti, man, what a story he has been. And quite frankly, let's say Indiana doesn't beat Ohio State, but let's say they end up hosting a college football playoff game the weekend of December 20th on their campus. What a cool story this narrative has created. And John, you know this from your work with the league you're in. You guys experienced this with some of the playoff systems already in the past. So I think now that we have this larger playoff, having home 5 through 12 higher seeded games, I think it's going to be some of the best environment we've seen in winter elimination type games. Bowl games are one thing, but when you have an elimination game to advance to the quarterfinals, I think that's pretty special for the highest level.
You pretty cool from Athens. I left at 10, had meetings, got back at 10, and John and Coach John Brady called from Baton Rouge. That was fun. We're going to be – guys, if y'all like college basketball, we've got the best. I mean, we got a coach right here. We got an athletic director who played college ball. You bring in Coach John Brady. We will give you all the basketball that you can handle, plus even more coverage. John, talk about here's a question. Anything happen, football program at ULM, whatever, because here's the thing about you and Dudley Dawson and this show. We don't traffic in BS. If someone wants to know something and someone's on here, hey, because you're going to get the truth. So what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, unfortunately, we're on a 2-game skid. 5-3, and hope to correct that or break that string on Saturday. Really good about Texas State coming to town. We got bumped up to ESPNU, so it'll be as a lot of our fans say, it'll be a mimosa or Bloody Mary Saturday morning, 11 a.m. kickoff on ESPNU against against Texas State. But last weekend we went to Huntington, West Virginia, had a battle, lost 28-23. Marshall, is a really, really talented football team. I didn't realize until after the game, and I was reading some notes, they've won like over 80% of their home games in the last 20 plus years. So really tough place to play there in Huntington. Most people probably saw we had an incident involving our O-line coach who got a little overzealous on the sideline about a substitution. One of our backup offensive linemen, and he made physical contact with him, really more of a chest bump than anything, which was unfortunate. That can't happen. That's not what our program stands for.
Yeah.
But we handled it internally. I mean, obviously there's some discipline there. There's some guidelines going forward that can't happen again. But I hate to get political after 2 days ago, but it's crazy the number of people who have nothing to do with our program, nothing to do with ULM, who want to weigh in and jump on the cancel culture bandwagon about, you got to fire him, you can't, and everybody's entitled to their opinion, but that's what my job is. This, if you're in this business long enough, you deal with situations like this.
Yeah,
we feel like we handled it appropriately.
Absolutely. I absolutely respect that. And, golly, when I went to Christian Brothers High School, Coach Russell Reed was one tough-ass man. As he would often say, he taught history, and he was one of the football coaches at CBHS. He goes, by God, I was the last 16 letterman in Ole Miss history. 1947, football, basketball, baseball, and your track and field. And Coach Reed was a man's man. And let me tell you something. Run the play and run it right, or there were consequences. I loved it. I mean, that's discipline. I had no problem with it, man. I wrote a few 5,000-word themes about the inside of a ping pong ball, but I learned there's nothing inside of a ping pong ball. There's nothing. All right, guys, let's do some rapid fire right now. Look, I like what I'll tell you. I love our audience. We do a live show. We live stream Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and then it's assimilated out into the algorithms. If y'all knew what Brendan did behind the scenes, it'd kind of be like asking, I wonder what went on during Einstein's mind when he was having a cocktail. Holy cow. goes everywhere. I love our audience. DJ Lagway. There's a lot going on in this college football season. Matt, who I'm going to ask both of y'all, your top 4 teams in the country, not just the SEC, top 4 teams in the country, because the SEC cannot stay over on the side and avoid having to play everybody else. That's what makes this so much fun. I'll start with you, Matt, in 30 seconds or less. Your top 4 teams in the country, college football.
Well, I'm probably the most biased guy in this staff about one of those teams, but I would go Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, and my 4th would be Miami. I think one of the stories that's been incredible this year is Cam Ward. I don't know how the Heisman voting is going to play out. I know we hear a lot about Travis Hunter, Colorado. We hear some other talk about the fine running back from Boise State, Ashton Jeanty. But I'll tell you this, guys. I watched Cam Ward a lot the last 2 years when he played for Washington State, and he made them very relevant. Washington State, ironically, is 7-1 right now, fellas. They're like 21st in the nation. They lost Cam Ward from last year. But I think Miami right now, as long as they don't stub their toe, they're one of the most unique and dangerous football teams in college football.
All right,
John, what do you think?
Yeah, John.
Well, I was going to ask John the next question. Why you did the flipperooski on your internet there, Rob?
Yeah. I mean, I've got to absolutely agree. I think the top 3, in total agreement with Matt, Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia. Man, it is a toss-up beyond there. Miami is playing well. I just don't know if they're an elite level team. Wow, that's a tough one. I'll go out on a different limb there. I'll say Tennessee. When Tennessee has momentum going, man, they are a really talented football team.
Wow. Well, no, I just thought that was interesting that you said, because a lot of people are talking about how Tennessee's on the downward skids, but you feel like they're gonna turn it around.
I think they're a really talented team. You never can tell about chemistry and what's going on internally, but they have the pieces to make a CFP run.
All right.
I have a real question for Matt, because he's Oregon. This is not a knock. Can you tell me why Oregon should be number 1 in your opinion? Because I'm down here in Florida, on the other side of the country. I don't watch them as much. Matt, give me your 1 minute. Rob, if you don't mind, give me your 1 minute on why Oregon should be number 1.
No, I think it's a fair question. So I could start out. Obviously, they did beat Ohio State head-to-head, and everyone wants to point late that Ohio State had a bad call. I can tell you Oregon left 9 points on the field because of special teams, and also the first touchdown Ohio State got in the drive should have been overturned by a play that was not reviewed on interception. That's number 1. Number 2, early on, they did not have it together on the offensive line. They've got better every week, and they recently, I think it validated for the close Boise State win with Boise State being in the top 20 of the country.
Right, that's a good point, because
when Illinois came in 21st in the country. They decimated Illinois. I mean, who's a physical football team? They beat them 38-9. Now, that being said, the biggest reason I think, Brendan, you look at their defense. Since Dan Lanning's got there, they have. I'm not saying like a Kirby Smart defense yet, but it's getting closer. Oregon's traditionally known for their offense, all the way back. In the days of Chip Kelly and Bellotti, back in the days of Rich Brooks. But now, both sides of the ball, man, they can get stops, Brendan. And I think when you're talking about winning football playoff games, sometimes you've got to be able to get a stop when they're stopping you. And in the past, that's been kind of Oregon's, Achilles, I think. And I think they're better on both sides of the ball. If there's a weakness, I still worry a little bit about special teams. Last year, they lost a game at Washington and a late miss on the field goal. You hope you're not in those situations again, but I just think both sides of the ball. Tosh Lupoy, who used to be at Alabama, has done a marvelous job with that side of the football. And Dan Lanning's I think Dan Lanning's, guys, and I'm biased, my son works for him, but Dan Lanning's really good.
He is, and I think what's been different about Oregon it's the line of scrimmage. And as they get stronger, everything starts up front. John, looking, and Gary Harris is going to be on with us in just a moment from Tuscaloosa. But looking at the SEC this year, and I think you can transfer this to any conference, I don't think it's a bad year. I think there's just a lot of really good teams. So why is everybody saying there's not a dominant team? Because it's true. There's not a dominant team, but in some years we seem to think that there is. And oftentimes that dominant team gets beat when they play a better team because they didn't really play a tough schedule. I think that's the real story here.
Yeah, and obviously parity is a part of it. And parity is probably a term that gets overused. But look at multiple leagues. I mean, and I'll even say, hey, you can put ULM in that equation. Our football program over the past 5, 8, 10 years has not been very good until this year. And, some opponents in the Sun Belt considered, hey, this week against ULM, this is a layup, much like the SEC did for a while with Vanderbilt. I mean, that's not happening anymore. So I think what you're seeing, the teams that maybe have been at the bottom or at least the lower echelon of leagues are vastly improved. And so, you don't have an off week. I mean, every week is a grind, and you better come with your chin strap, double buckled and ready to play, else you run the chance of losing. And, we've seen those games throughout the year with people who were not given much of a chance of even staying in the game, not only staying in the game, but winning those games.
Yeah. Matt, looking best conference, top to bottom, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, ACC. Is the ACC, are they surprising you? And what are we to think about SMU being where they are? They knocked off an undefeated Pittsburgh team last week in Dallas. Clemson, they go on a winning streak after losing to Georgia, but then they play a team, Louisville, that's 6-3 and in the playoff rankings, ironically, and get beat at home like 33-20. What do you infer from that?
I have a good friend that's on the Louisville's administration, and you can go back to the Louisville-Miami game. They thought an open hand fumble that if it goes their way, that one call in a 45-38 game, Louisville may have had a chance to prevail against Miami. So, Louisville's a really good 6-3 team. That's number one.
They are.
I think the ACC is really intriguing because you mentioned SMU. What a huge win, because I really would have thought prior to that game, I would have favored Pitt, even though they were 7-point underdogs, because Pitt had been playing really, really good football and undefeated. But I told you earlier, I feel very, very strongly about Miami. So I just think the ACC right now, the bigger question is, can they get 2? I think Miami's in unless something really goes wacky the last few weeks. I still think, and maybe because we work on the SEC sidelines, Rob, network here, I still think top to bottom, I think the SEC is the best conference. I'll tell you why. I'll give you one example. Look what Vanderbilt's doing. I mean, no one in their right mind thought that Vanderbilt would be a bowl team to win against Alabama, to play Texas the way they did. Rob, unfortunately, go to Auburn and get a win. I mean, Vanderbilt, man, to me, let's also talk about South Carolina.
Yeah.
And had all the momentum. They really, in the fourth quarter, dominated LSU when Marcel Reed entered the game. And then, obviously, Shane Beamer had a week to prepare for the dual threat. And, boy, they got some edge rushers at South Carolina, guys. I don't know if you've watched any of them. They are just electric. And I still think top to bottom, it's the SEC. Now, when you go to the Big Ten, outside of Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana, and I'll even put in Penn State, but my gosh, they can't score a touchdown against Ohio State. After that, I think there's a bigger drop-off than the SEC. That's just me personally.
All right, let me welcome in Gary Harris, Tuscaloosa. And Gary Harris on the road again. I love it. This is the first show ever where we've had 2 mobile guests. I love this. John Hartwell, Gary Harris at the Sidelines 500. Gary, how you doing, man?
I got to be careful. You know how it is. I got to focus
Absolutely
on the road, so the shot may be a little bumpy, but But I'm doing all right, guys. How are you?
Doing great. I know you just got a few minutes before you do your show. Let's talk about Alabama. Nobody's had more success in Baton Rouge than Alabama. That's always easy to say, but you got to go play them this Saturday. Jalen Milroe versus Nussmeier, that quarterback matchup. Your thoughts on that, and what do you think's going to happen? This is one of the great rivalries in college football, and the NFL people will be there, of course, in record numbers.
Yeah, I'm not looking at the stats. Obviously, I'm driving, but I think it's 29, 10, and 2 or 3 Alabama all time in Baton Rouge, which is absolutely amazing. They've won 2 out of every 3 they've played down there. Which, again, and I'm not taking anything away from the atmosphere. I'm not taking anything away from how tough it is to play there. I'm just saying that the history is that Alabama's track record in Baton Rouge is phenomenal. It's not just good; it's incredible. So. Yeah. Now, they did lose 2 years ago in overtime, but as far as the quarterbacks are concerned, I mean, it's, maybe it's a simplistic approach, but you could argue that whichever quarterback plays the best, their team will win the game. Both of these offenses are pretty quarterback dependent for different reasons. I mean, Nussmeier is a traditional pocket quarterback. He's he's athletic, but he's not going to beat you with his legs. And I think for Alabama, the key is to get pressure on him. If you allow him to sit back there and survey the field and have time to find those great receivers that he has, and they've got a bunch of them, I think he'll pick you apart with surgical precision. But if you can, pressure burst pipes, and it also gives quarterbacks fits. And we saw with what A&M was able to do in the second half against him, get him out of rhythm. Uncharacteristically, he tried to force some throws, and he just played poorly. And I think a lot of that had to do with the pressure that A&M was able to apply. So Alabama needs to be able to pressure him first. And obviously, LSU has not been able to run the ball very well. This is not the game that if you're Alabama's defense, you want to see them start running the ball. So you still got to be, cognizant of keep making them one-dimensional and then applying pressure to him and trying to limit him getting into a rhythm, because he's one of those guys, he can rattle off 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13 completions in a row. Yeah. And on the other side for Milroe, I think that you're going to see a game plan that's similar to what they did against Missouri, and that I think they're going to commit to the run more with the running backs, not just with Jalen, but with the running backs, and stick with it. They stuck with it against Missouri, and I think wound up rushing for 271 yards in the game. I think they need that. And then you can do a lot of things off of it with him. You can do the play action. You can do the boots. You can make some things happen in the passing game. So I think these quarterbacks are critical to their team's success, and I think whichever defense does a better job defending the other's quarterback is probably going to win the game.
Yeah. John?
Yeah, again, how you doing, Gary? And
hey, John.
I was in Baton Rouge. I'm actually pulling out of Baton Rouge now on my way back to Monroe. Played there in men's basketball last night. But I'll tell you, folks on the Bayou are already getting charged up about that game. And as I mentioned earlier, their fans are kind of calling this game loser leave town, saying that obviously as it relates to the playoff matchup, whoever loses this, it's going to be a tough road to hoe to be able to get there with 3 losses. So I look forward to seeing, that game. We play early. We play at 11 a.m. on ESPNU. So I definitely look forward to tuning into that one Saturday night from Baton Rouge.
Well, I think that's accurate. I think this is an elimination game. I don't see any way in the world that the loser of this game, regardless of what they do the rest of the season, gets into the playoff. I just don't think a 3-loss. I think the SEC is going to get 4 teams in, but I think they're going to have the SEC champion, and I think there'll be 3 teams that are 2-loss teams that get in. So I don't think you go if you lose this game. And for Alabama, this would be, been a while since they've been in these waters. And for DeBoer, it's a big game because he's 0-2 in the SEC on the road. He lost at Vanderbilt, he lost at Tennessee. And in both those games, not to take anything away from the opponent, but you could argue that Alabama did not play well in those games. And, that there were a lot of self-inflicted wounds. You could argue that the in-game coaching decisions were not great. And, that's probably the hardest thing, I think, for football fans in regards to their team is sometimes you do just play well and get beat. It happens.
Yeah.
You just look back and you say, man, that other team just played great. And then sometimes you lose a game and you look at all the mistakes that you made and all the things that, were unforced errors and penalties and stuff that Alabama needs to clean up. So I think what the hope is that experience in those two games in Nashville and in Knoxville, games that they could have won, but they didn't, that they will learn the lessons from those games and, have prepared well. The last time they had a bye, they came out and just absolutely ambushed Georgia in the first quarter. So I think there's a feeling that with the bye week, maybe Alabama's got some wrinkles and some things that LSU hasn't prepared for. But yeah, this is a playoff game in my opinion. And for Alabama and LSU, I think they're all playoff games from here on out. I mean, I think if you drop one, you're not going to the playoffs. So there's a lot on the line. I know this town well, and I know this program, and I know how it works. And if Alabama wins that game Monday morning on my show, it's going to be a lot of fun. Everybody's going to be in a giddy mood and laying out the plans for how they're going to get to the playoff. And if Alabama loses, it's going to be nasty around here. Fans are not going to be cutting a lot of slack for Coach DeBoer and his staff anymore. If you're 2 weeks into November and you're already basically eliminated from the college football playoff, it's going to be a bad atmosphere in Tuscaloosa. So that's what's at stake. It's a huge football game for both these teams.
Matt.
No, Gary's spot on. It's just really intriguing, Gary, because we talked earlier, there's going to be so many teams. You look in the SEC that could end up 10-2 outside of the football playoff. I think one of the questions I brought up earlier, Gary, was if you have a 10-2 team that goes to the SEC championship game and loses that game, becomes 10-3. When you start going to top 12, how does that 10-3 SEC runner-up view to other team 10-2 if there's no head-to-head? I mean, I just think it's a real – because the depth of the SEC and some resurgence of some programs, there's going to be some tough conversations getting to that four. But I agree, Gary, it's going to be 4 teams from the SEC. I think it's going to be interesting. There's a 10-3 team that loses in the SEC championship game. I think they should be in there. How does that play out? That's curious.
Well, that's a $1 million question, really. It is, man. And I don't know. I would think this. The advantage is if you get to the SEC championship game and you win it, obviously you're in. Right. You get a bye. Yeah. If you play in that game and you have 2 losses and you lose, it's a disadvantage. There's no way around it. First of all, you have to sit on the fence worried about getting in, and then even if you get in, then you're going to turn around and play again after already having played an extra game. So This is the thing that when you add getting in the gate code here, but when you add 2 teams and you go to 16 teams and you don't have divisions, you really set yourself up for this type of chaos. But nobody cares because the SEC championship game and these conference championship games are such a major moneymaker that it's like, we'll figure it out. But yeah, you don't want to go to the SEC championship game and lose, period. Yeah. But if you do wind up with 3 losses, then I don't know. I can't answer that question. It'll be interesting to see if it's held against you or if the committee says, well, they were a 2-loss team. They played the extra game. They played for their conference championship. We're going to put them in ahead of some other 2-loss teams, even though they have 3 losses. I just don't know.
Gary, Dudley Dawson's on here. He's about Wednesdays now, but this is the old days. You and him used to be together.
Yeah.
That was so much. That's what spurred me to have so many guys come on together like this because y'all are pros and it's great. He said that's his deck at his house in the Boston Mountains out there in Arkansas. Say hello to Gary Dudley from Hogville.
Hey, Gary, how you doing? I apologize. I did not get the memo about this is going to be comedian / sports writers riding in car day. I can run out there. But I think you like the backdrop, don't you?
I love it. It relaxes me. Yeah. Well, Dudley, we've been talking about this college football playoff and what it's going to be like, Alabama and LSU, and just the interest in the college football, I think it's just off the charts. I know, Gary, you've got to go in and do your show, but let me ask you this before you go. And I've got the app on my phone. I love your show. The way you treat guests, you bring them on, you're insightful, and you got some great callers, but it is kind of wild. We feel like therapists sometimes, with fans and talking them off the cliff and whatever. I think if you're an Alabama fan, you can go back and watch tradition. You start paying attention to the past a lot more, especially if you're struggling. But the standard at Alabama is so high. I've got a viewer. She's an attorney in Tuscaloosa. She texted me Tuesday morning. She goes, "We just need to accept the fact that we're a basketball school now." And I'm like, hey, people don't get overreact, do they ever, Gary?
Well, I mean, that's a little bit of an
It's
overreaction, obviously, but they're excited about basketball. I will say that, but no, it's we've talked about it before. You know, being a fan is so exhilarating and fun, and you get a lot of joy out of following your teams. But sometimes it's it's a helpless feeling because you really don't control anything that happens, and when you allow yourself as an individual to be so tied up into what a college football team or college athletic team does that it starts impacting your self-esteem, and it starts, impacting how you feel about yourself and your job and your family and all that, then, it's, that's fandom, but it happens, and it's probably extreme, and it shouldn't, but I see it a lot here in this town. There's no doubt. I mean, again, I told you what it's going to be like Monday. It's either going to be the highest of highs and excitement, or it's going to be the lowest of lows, and that's just the way it's going to be, depending on the outcome of that game on Saturday night. So, fans are what make it all go around. Without the fans, we don't have any of this, and they're great, but sometimes they can be a little extreme. Sure. All right, guys.
I hear you. That Vi is a 7-point favorite at Arkansas this week, and they really need to get that one. I mean, you talk about dealing with fan bases. I've had one here the past couple of years that's had more problems than Tony Soprano. So we're having to massage the whole thing through this. There's a lot of people who won't change. A lot of people who want to give him a little bit more time. But you better get by this weekend. You better win the bye week.
Yeah, you better not lose that one. Hey, enjoy it, guys. Take care.
Gary, thank you so much. We'll do it again next week. Appreciate it. Let me say something real quick before we go to Dudley about LandersFordMemphis.com. Proud to have them as a new sponsor. The number one ranked Ford dealership in the Mid-South. They can deliver anywhere. Their hours of operation, easy. Monday through Saturday, the dealership is open 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Service department, Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Cars, trucks, SUVs, the Ford F-150s, the Broncos. Love the new Bronco, the Sasquatch package. You absolutely have got to go test drive one of these. Ask for Brad Bellamy, the general manager, our friend out there. Just ask for him. Tell him you heard about him on SEC Sidelines Sports Network. They will walk you through the process, hook you up with a great salesman. And it doesn't take 3.5 days. It's a couple hours or less. If you do it, in advance, it can be a little bit quicker, but they are open right there at Poplar and Houston Levy in Collierville. LandersFordMemphis.com. And there, guys, you talk about sponsors that invest in the community. Their name is on 6 stadiums, like Houston High School, Collierville High School played last week in the Landers Bowl is what I call it. They're also title sponsor of the Touchdown Club of Memphis. And they're the only dealership it's the only golf tournament in America where the local dealers provide the vehicles, and that is Landers Ford. And we are so proud to be associated with them. They're just great people to work with because they invest. And that also, wherever you are, hit that QR code for LandersFordMemphis.com. They can deliver anywhere. Matt, this is Dudley's, the view from his back porch up there in the Boston Mountains. Do I detect a little snow in the background? I mean, not yet. It's 80 degrees. But, Dudley, I think maybe that's more reflective of the temperature of the fan base. You go on the road and destroy Mississippi State and come home and Ole Miss plays their best game of the year. Golly, Arkansas, they're fun to watch. How do you grade the team up to this point, and what do you think is going to happen the rest of the year?
Fun to watch, huh? Yeah, boy.
Well, entertaining. Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, they've been. I do think they're a better team than they were last year, but obviously it was a cluster here last year, and the inconsistency. They will have one great week, one not so great week. It's kind of alternated wins and losses here. Obviously the big point of the season was beating Tennessee. As far as the low point of the season, you can find a bunch of different spots, but I go back to that Oklahoma State game, which I thought was going to be the narrative, start the narrative from game 2 there. They should have won that ball game. If they are, they're feeling good. Probably go beat Texas A&M then when you look at that game. And it's just been kind of an inconsistent thing every week. Who's going to be healthy? are they going to win the turnover battle? The turnover battle continues to be the deciding factor for this football program. If they have more takeaways than turnovers, then they've won the football game. If they haven't, they've lost, and sometimes in embarrassing fashion, which is what last weekend was, and has started the drumbeat again for a possible change.
Matt, looking at it from your perspective on Arkansas, he just said the drumbeat again for change. How many times can you keep doing this? Well, this is the 5th year of Sam Pittman, so that's a 5-year run. What do you think?
Well, Dudley, good to be back with you. It's been a while, but I love the backyard setting there, man. I am a little jealous here as you see my wife's china cabinet behind me. But that being said, I agree. The Oklahoma State game was real intriguing, Dudley. I watched a lot of that game, and I thought they had maybe close to 690 yards. I could be wrong. They had a ton of offense, but because of turnovers, and you look at that game and you mentioned A&M. Obviously Ole Miss played really well, but moving forward, unfortunately, it's not about getting to a bowl, because honestly, you should get to a bowl. I think a lot of people are going to look at the Texas game is kind of like, okay, game number 10, where are we as a football program? Can we play clean football? Can we have a shot to beat Texas, which obviously you can't play the way you did like against Ole Miss and think that happens. But I don't know if that's a litmus test or not, Dudley. I don't know if people are like, it's time to move on. I'll just tell you, I've got friends that know Coach personally. I'm a big Sam Pittman fan as an individual. And honestly, he was a well-renowned offensive line coach before he got this opportunity. And it looks like bringing in Petrino made a lot of sense on the offensive side of the ball. But if we're sitting here in week 10 talking about turnover margin, that still means there's a problem going on somewhere. But I'm a huge fan of him. I don't know the answer to that question, Rob. I just don't know what plays out. I think if they play well against Arkansas, get Louisiana Tech, and I think they'll be good enough to win at Missouri. If they go 7-5, win a bowl game, I would hope they give them another chance. But maybe the people are ready for a different narrative. I don't know.
Yeah, and the other scenario that's floating around out there, Coach Pittman, who you're right, is a very good dude. The last couple of seasons have been tough and have kind of turned I would say that the tide against him, so to speak. But it's one of those things that you have to produce. And he also has been having a lot of trouble with his hip. There's a lot of, talk about, hey, will he retire? And move on, and everybody's happy. Gets however many $1 million with the buyout or the negotiated buyout. A lot has to do whether he's 500 too. There's just money on whether he's 500 overall and all that stuff. So I could see, it ending amicably. For everybody and everybody getting something out of it. I do think when they look at the situation, if they do decide to move in a new direction, it's definitely going to be somebody younger. It's definitely going to be somebody who is willing to play the NIL and recruiting game. There are obviously candidates that, have been mentioned, including the offensive coordinator here, Barry Odom at UNLV, Rhett Lashley, who is from here, his old house just down from mine here in Springdale, Arkansas. It's a new day and age of college athletics, and I think that the situation we're seeing is moving more toward playing the game off the field as much as it is playing it on the field. That'll always be the results driven, but you got to do both in this day and age.
Yeah. And looking again, we're not the ones that'll decide it, but just observing, Sam Pittman's done a lot of things right. He's brought in Bobby Petrino to make things better. He's brought in Travis Williams, and he doesn't seem to get in their way. He's not an egomaniac like some coaches that are from Northwest Arkansas would say that they were going to turn over the play calling duties to other people. And as soon as things went the other way, they would throw him under the bus.
He also just used to live down the street. So.
Yes, he did. He's from Fort Smith. But, I mean, I'm just calling it like I see it. I think when you look at Arkansas, you've got Texas coming up on the 16th. I mean, that people know that has always been a big rivalry, but the hatred, it's unreal. It is tangible. You can feel it. You can spread it with a knife. Texas and Arkansas, and so many Texas kids go to school at Arkansas. And a little bit of trivia, like people always say, tell us things we don't know about these different SEC schools. Over 34,000 students at the University of Arkansas, undergrad and grad. 34,000 and growing. I mean, it's a big school, people. And so all these, I had a guy tell me what's going on with Texas. He said, so many of us, when we graduated from Arkansas, would move to Dallas, Fort Worth, or Houston. So now those people down there, their kids are wanting to come back home to Arkansas. And that's why there's so many Texas kids up in Fayetteville. And if you go up there, you will see why. It's the Boulder of the South without a lot of those other distractions. But as Dudley says, Dixon Street, along with a few other things, is undefeated in life. And that's where you got to watch it. Dudley.
Yeah, I can't overstate the importance of this next game. And it's not just the result of it, it's the perception of how you come out of this. If you have a second straight humbling, embarrassing loss, then we're headed in the direction.
Yeah.
You're heading in the wrong direction. If that happens. Dudley, are you back? Yeah. Dudley, the mountains got him. But Matt, it is tough because you're on top of the world when you go to Arkansas, and then you're feeling just awful like Otis Campbell the morning after he's been out riding around when he bought that cow and he got into the corn squeezes. It's the highs and the lows that are just so tough. And Dudley, what I love about him is he is a true grit journalist. I mean, he's a professional. He's like, I'm not a fan. I'm a journalist. Everybody knows Sam Pittman's a good dude. Everybody likes him. But a head coach, if he's smart, doesn't mind hiring people that are better than him at certain things. Bobby Petrino is an elite offensive coordinator. But, boy, when you score 58 on the road at Mississippi State, and the next week you come home and you can't even get out of the driveway, or you're, I always like to say a team that's just struggling and just terrible. Yeah. It's like riding around on four bald tires. It's tough.
I will say this, guys. The one thing that's been interesting about Ole Miss the last couple of years is just the improvement of their defense. And I'm not saying, that's any excuse as to why Arkansas didn't perform the way they did last week.
It's the truth.
It's the truth. That being said, the inconsistencies are what kind of drive fan bases to drink more, I think.
Yes.
you put up 58, and then the next weekend, you can't get out of your driveway. That's a pretty good analogy. And that was the thing that happened to my home state last year when, they had statistically one of the top 10 defenses in the country, but they couldn't move the football at all. And this year, at least they're doing better on the offensive side. Matter of fact, they've had multiple games where they've scored over 40 points. Now, I think there's that in-between balance. You want, like he mentioned Barry Odom. I think the world of Barry Odom. I mean, the job he's done at UNLV this year, I'm not saying he's being targeted by anyone, but if I was an AD and I was in the Power Four, he would be on my short list because you look at his track record. He's a really fine football coach.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I'm Barry Odom, the one thing I'm going to do is get Wayne Newton to come address my team. You're out there in Las Vegas, man. That's tough. Let's head back out to the Boston Mountains out there in the northwest corner of Arkansas. Dudley, Eugene Dawson. Another person, Dudley, the other day I was talking, he said, yeah, he's from over in Newport. Everybody knows that Dudley is from Newport, but he's actually from the tiny farming community of Balch, Arkansas. Dudley, talking about the Hogs and the SEC, and I know that Otis Kirk does most of the recruiting at hogville.net. But you've got a great staff of writers that are putting out great content. What are you hearing about football recruiting for the Razorbacks?
Well, a couple of things here.
Whoops. We've lost the man in the in the Ozarks out there.
Back about the trees here, so I'll be talking from behind the tree. But recruiting has gone great out of state. It's not gone great in state, which is another detriment to keeping the head coach in state. You've got guys that are going to Oklahoma, guys that are going to Missouri. It's been an issue. Although they've seemed to recruit really well out of state. Going back to the Texas thing, the problem with the LSU game was not only that you won or lost by a large margin, but also they just danced on the field, taunted you. It just looked bad overall. It looked like an undisciplined football team, although that hadn't been the case most of the year. But it just was the way it went down, and you cannot have another one of those with Texas, who may or may not be a better football team than Ole Miss, but you just can't have another one of those.
Yeah, I agree. And, Matt, we talk so much about it's the week to week that drives you crazy. You think, oh, we've got it figured out. And the next week, the team just doesn't look like they paid any attention. I like to say they didn't study for the test. That's where we are. This SEC football season, guys, and I look at the beautiful foliage in the background of the Boston Mountains. Another one of our sponsors we absolutely love. I'm wearing a T-shirt today. Exo Armor. Exo Armor makes the non-invasive pads and using 3D printers. You can be a football team, college, pro, high school. Player jams his wrist, sprains an ankle, or something that they can get back in the game with. They use 3D printer. You type in the athletes' coordinates, their information. They can do a 3D printer, have a brace going, the player's back on the field in the third quarter. Amazing. Exo Armor. Check them out. Sarah Cooley is the marketing director. They've got salesmen that go around the country. They're working with some of the top college programs in America. So they're a great sponsor to have, as is Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company, open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Over 7,000 pairs of boots. Schaefer, Pendleton, Duckheads, Filson Barber. Great out. I'm telling you, you get out there in Collierville on the square or go to hewlettanddunn.com. You will find a great selection. Dudley, we'll wrap up here in just a second.
I don't think Dudley's on there anymore.
Okay,
Dudley,
okay.
you there? He's got a gray circle.
Okay. Yeah,
Dudley's hidden in the trees.
Yeah,
He's frolicking in the aspens and the foliage and the green and the changing of the. By the way, if you ever want to see some great change, go to Colorado. This time of year is time you.
Well, I'm waiting for it. I mean, Matt and I are up here in Memphis. I don't know what it's like down there, but I mean, the leaves have not begun to change. Not around here, and the foliage. It's going to be 80 degrees in New York City today, so that's kind of wild. But
just 80
Matt,
degrees. I was just seeing. I was reading Twitter and breaking news that the Texas wide receiver Cook is no longer with the program. So
Ringo still is though. And
but this is the kid. That he's. I guess they've had problems with him, but I'm just looking for any reason for Florida to win on Saturday.
Well, I mean, Brendan and Matt, you look at Florida. We when are we going to know something? I would say this to everybody.
Game time.
Okay. Well, listen to the Buddy Martin Show. Watch it tonight right here on this channel. Buddy Martin Show, 9 p.m. Eastern, orangeandbluebloods.com. Boy, they have a great panel that comes together. Ben Troop, Franz Beard, Buddy Martin, Lauren Meadows. It is a rock star event, and it's all on this channel, along with the Best Fridays in Football with Urban Meyer, Buddy and Brendan Martin. And we do SECU. Dudley, we lost you. I think he fell off the deck into the beautiful foliage in the background. Dudley, you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I had to run over there to the church, if you see the church.
Oh, that's where they found my dog today, in the church parking lot. There you go.
Yeah, his dog was missing before the show.
Yeah.
Sammy Bones.
I've been missing for about 24 hours, and then they tell me I got to get him snipped. I'm a guy, okay? He's a guy dog. I get it, all right? But just leave me alone about snipping my dog, okay? I'm not there. I'm a single dude. I got divorced with this dog, you know? I don't feel like snipping his you-know-whats right now, okay?
Sammy Bones
deserves your decision.
Hey, look, he's an adult. He's 4 years old. Dog year's 28. He can stay out all night. I mean, look, you know what I mean? We'll have a little conversation about checking in with dad, maybe, but enough with the snipping my dog.
Yeah, we love our dogs.
Yeah, well, that got that take care of at 40. Sit down that baby, make it back.
Well, hey,
that's true.
Oh, listen, guys, and I'm going to throw this around. A couple of questions real quick before we tag out. I want to say we have the best sponsors. All can be found sidelines.live on our website. Also, hit those QR codes. Let them know you support them. That's how SEC Sidelines Sports Network stays on the air. We're blessed. I cannot thank people enough that support this show. We are here to serve. Matt, before we go, you know, you are covering a lot. You know, you're an athletic director, associate AD. You've been a coach for 32 years. At this time of the year, we hear everybody's banged up in the grind and all like that. You're talking about 18 to 23-year-olds. By the way, is this the last year of the virus so we can get past the 7th, 8th, and 9th year guys? Because it's getting – I'm so over that. Matt?
Yeah. I mean, we're through that portion of the COVID years of eligibility. But I will say about this time of year, especially in football, and we see it at the level that I work at, you have a lot of things in play. Where are you in the conference standings? You know, we have a lot of young men. If it's really one of those situations where do we want to bring them back and risk things if it's not, you know, worth it from their standpoint and also from the team standpoint. But I just think that's where depth's important, guys. The rosters matter. If you have 2 or 3 at each position, these things are not as prevalent. And that's why I think you look at the teams that have managed the combination of yearly recruiting with NIL additions. It's almost like this new free agency has allowed you, Rob, if you're a recruiter and you know you're short a wide receiver, hey, I better get another wide receiver in that room if we have some problems. Same thing with the trenches. And I think that's really, if you look at the O-line, D-line, that's where it shows up a lot with people, because if you lose an O-lineman this time of year, that's really integral. That's why I think a lot of people don't give Georgia enough credit. I think it was Rutledge they lost for a few games. I don't know if he's still out or not. Very talented. But that's really integral in terms of able to execute, protect, run the football. And when you don't have those 5 guys up in the trenches, you're not the same football team.
You're not. Dudley, you were talking about recruiting, and say it again, Hogs are doing really well out of state.
But not good in state. They've lost a lot of the top players that are going to Missouri, Oklahoma, some other places, and that's that's just not something that you as an Arkansas program can do, is let those players get out of state. So that is something that's probably will factor into the decision as well. But I think we will have certainly a idea of where we are headed after that Texas game for sure. And I think, everything will kind of transform after that. You play Louisiana Tech after that, the following week at 3, that would get you to a bowl. Not sure a bowl doesn't. Right. We'll see.
Yeah, I know. And Arkansas, NIL, everybody's got NIL. And I think there's probably people on the fence going, okay, once
Arkansas
I see
late to the party, there's no doubt about that. There's late to the party, and that's part of why they're in the situation they're in.
Yeah, and I think a lot of schools were. I mean, Alabama kind of waited because they were like, we are the pinnacle of college football. Why do we have to do this? But they're still recruiting. They got the number 1 or 2 class in the country, depending on what service that you look at. But, guys, awesome show. Again, support our sponsors. They're all on this website at Sidelines with an S.live. Executive producer Brendan Martin, extraordinaire, the captain of the ship. We found Sammy Bones.
Sammy Bones. Show Me
Yeah.
the Bones is coming
And-
home. He's gonna be on.
and-
I'm gonna make a bed for him back here so I can watch his ass when he's on the show.
In the Baptist Church parking lot right there in the neighborhood. So, look,
Hey,
folks,
yeah.
got a great show tomorrow.
Girl
Going to be a
found it,
lot
huh?
of fun with the most blessed people in the greatest country in the history of the world. Go out, find ways to help other people every day. The old
Like
motto,
find my dog.
excuses to win. And find dogs.
Find
Make
my
great things
dog
happen.
today. Find my dog. Bye, guys.
Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
Love
The
you,
Wave
mean
Man.
it. Bye, bye,
Bye,
John
everybody.
Boy. Good night,
See ya.
John Boy.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.